Picture this. You just walked away from a conversation with someone you care about, and everything looks fine on the surface. No shouting. No obvious fight. But somewhere between your chest and your stomach, something sits heavy, like you swallowed a stone, and you do not know why. You replay the conversation in your head. You try to find the moment it went wrong, and then you start to wonder if maybe it did not go wrong at all. Maybe it is just you. That feeling has a name, and today we are going to look at it together. Welcome back to the observation deck. I am glad you are here. If you are anything like the person I used to be, you leave many conversations with people close to you, carrying that exact feeling something is wrong, but you cannot name what it is. And because you cannot name it, you do the only thing that seems logical. You turn the question inward. You ask yourself, am I too emotional? End of half. Expecting too much. Am I just being difficult? Here is what I want you to hear before we go any further. That feeling is not a personal flaw. It is not overreacting. More often than not, it is a signal, a quiet, persistent signal, that someone has been slowly bending your reality to take control of your choices. I spent almost 2 years stuck in this pattern with a close friend. On the surface, she was warm, funny, and the kind of person who always seemed to need just a little more help than everyone else. And I, wanting to be a good friend, was always there to give it. The pattern looked like this. She would ask me to cover her work shift at the last minute, every single time she had a plan she wanted to go to. It was never planned ahead. It was always urgent. And every time I tried to say no, she had an answer ready. She would tell me I was the only person she trusted. She would say she would get fired if I did not help. She would remind me of every time she had ever done something kind for me, and suddenly the weight of all that history would press down on the word no until it caved in. I would always say yes. I canceled my own doctor's appointments. I missed my cousin's birthday dinner. I sat through a 12-hour shift I had never agreed to take, and I went home every night with my chest feeling stuffed with a crumpled piece of paper I could never quite smooth out. I kept telling myself I was just being selfish. I told myself that real friends show up, that loyalty means sacrifice, that if I just tried a little harder, the discomfort would go away. I bent myself further and further backwards, trying to prove I was worth keeping around. Then one afternoon, we argued about a plan she had, looked me in the eye, and promised she would keep. And when I brought it up, she looked at me with complete calm and told me she had never made that promise. She said I must have misremembered. Something shifted in that moment. Not anger, not even sadness exactly. More like the sensation of a light switching on in a room you have been stumbling through in the dark for so long that you forgot there was supposed to be a light at all. I was not misremembering. I was not too sensitive. I was not the problem. The problem was the pattern, a pattern she had been running on me so consistently and so quietly that I had started to see her version of reality as my own. Hesed is the part that most conversations about manipulation leave out. The majority of people who do this are not calculating villains, mapping out how to destroy you. They are people who learned somewhere early in life that this is simply how you get what you need. They pushed and people moved. They questioned someone's memory, and that person backed down. They made someone feel guilty, and the door opened. The behavior got rewarded, and so it continued. Most of them do not even have a word for what they are doing. That does not make it harmless. It does not mean you have to accept it. But it does mean that understanding it is less about assigning blame and more about recognizing a pattern so that you can stop being caught inside it. Psychological manipulation works through one central mechanism. It makes you distrust yourself. It chips away at your confidence in your own feelings, your own memory, your own right to make decisions about your own life. And once that internal compass starts to feel unreliable, you naturally look outward for direction, and the person doing the manipulating is right there, offering to tell you which way is north. There are 5 phrases that almost always signal this kind of hidden manipulation. You may have heard some of them before. You may have even said some of them yourself without realizing what they were doing. The first is, "You are too sensitive." This phrase does not actually address anything you said or felt. What it does is reframe your emotional response as the problem so that instead of examining the situation, you spend your energy defending the legitimacy of your own feelings. Once you are busy justifying why you have a right to feel what you feel, the original issue quietly disappears. The second is, "If you had not done that, I would not have done this." This is blame transfer, and it is one of the most effective tools in the pattern. No matter what actually happened, this phrase rewrites the story, so that their behavior is always a consequence of yours. It removes their responsibility entirely, and places the full weight of the outcome onto your shoulders. Over time, you start to believe that you are always the one who causes things to go wrong. The third is, "Why are you telling other people our business?" This one is particularly important to notice. Isolation is not always dramatic or obvious. Sometimes it looks like a reasonable request for privacy. But when someone consistently steers you away from talking to friends, family, or anyone outside the relationship, they are removing the people who could offer you an outside perspective. They are narrowing your world down to just the two of you, where their version of reality has no competition. The fourth is, "What would you do without me?" Said often enough, this phrase plants a seed of dependency. It builds a story where you are fundamentally incapable, where your ability to function is tied to this one person's presence. You start to believe that leaving or even pulling back means risking your stability. That fear keeps you in place far more effectively than any argument could. The fifth is, "I do this all for your own good." This is perhaps the most disorienting phrase on the list because it wraps control inside the language of care. When someone tells you their behavior is motivated by concern for you, it becomes very difficult to push back without feeling ungrateful. You end up in the strange position of apologizing for being uncomfortable with something that was supposedly done on your behalf. Now here is where most advice on this topic goes wrong. People will tell you that the only solution is to cut this person out of your life completely and immediately. Walk away, block the number, never look back. And sometimes, yes, that is the right call, especially when the pattern is severe, when your safety is involved, or when every attempt to address it has been met with more of the same. But not every relationship where manipulation happens is one you need to end. Some of these patterns exist in people who are capable of changing when they are met with a boundary that actually holds. Some exist in people you genuinely love and who genuinely love you back even if they have been operating from a broken playbook. The goal is not to blow everything up by default. The goal is to stop the pattern and then see what remains. So here is what actually works. The first step is to claim your feeling without asking for permission. You do not need to prove that your feeling is logical, or fair, or proportional. You can simply say, "I hear what you are saying, and this is how I feel." Your feelings are information for you. They are not a case you have to argue in court. When they push back, resist the urge to explain. Explanation invites negotiation, and negotiation often leads to you slowly talking yourself out of what you know is true. Instead, find one short neutral phrase and repeat it. "I understand. I still cannot do this." Then say it again. And again if you need to. This is not rudeness. This is the boundary holding its shape. Watch behavior over time, not words in the moment. Anyone can say they will change during a tense conversation. What matters is the pattern across weeks and months. If the words and the actions keep pointing in different directions, the actions are always telling you the truth. Adjust how much you give based on how much is actually mutual. If someone only reaches out when they need something, you respond to what they need and nothing more. If someone never shares anything real with you, you keep your own vulnerabilities to yourself. This is not revenge. It is not coldness. It is matching your energy investment to what the relationship has actually demonstrated it can hold. And if a conversation begins to spiral, if you find yourself going in circles saying the same things and getting nowhere, you are allowed to stop. You do not owe anyone an endless debate to validate your own experience. I think we need to come back to this later. Then you leave the conversation. That is a complete sentence and a complete action. What I want you to take away from today is this. The confusion you have been feeling, the self-doubt, the second-guessing, the quiet sense that something is wrong, but you cannot prove it, none of that is a sign that something is broken in you. It is a sign that something in the relationship has been out of balance, and your nervous system has been working overtime, trying to find solid ground. You noticed. That already matters. Tonight, before you go to sleep, take out a piece of paper or open the Notes app on your phone and write one sentence. Think of one conversation you walked away from feeling off. Write down what you felt in that moment, not an analysis, not a verdict, just the feeling. That is all. It will take you less than 60 seconds, and it is the beginning of learning to trust your own internal signal again. I will be here when you come back. This is the observation deck, and I am glad you stayed.